They say grief makes you crazy. When I found my late wife's 20-year-old rose garden shredded into mulch, so my entitled daughter-in-law could sip margaritas by a concrete hole, something in me snapped. Retaliation wasn't just an option, it was a promise. And today, I collected. My name is Avery. I'm 62 years old, a retired structural engineer, and a widower. 3 years ago, I lost my wife, Evelyn, to a brutal, aggressively fast battle with pancreatic cancer. We had been married for 35 years, and losing her felt like someone had hollowed out my chest with a melon baller. The only thing that kept me tethered to this earth after she passed was our home, and more specifically, her prized possession, the backyard rose garden. Evelyn was a master botanist in her own right. For over 2 decades, she poured her soul into that half-acre plot behind our house. It wasn't just a garden, it was a sanctuary. She had cultivated rare heritage breeds, imported climbing vines from England, and built these magnificent, sprawling wooden trellises with her own 2 hands. The centerpiece was a massive, decades-old peace rose bush. When she was cremated, at her specific request, I took half of her ashes and worked them deep into the soil beneath the roots of that very bush. It was my place to talk to her. Every morning, with a cup of black coffee in my hand, I would sit on the patio, look out at the explosive colors, and feel like she was still sitting right beside me. Then came my son, Ethan, and his wife, Victoria. Ethan has always been a bit malleable, a gentle kid who hates conflict and tends to mold himself to whoever is the loudest voice in the room. 5 years ago, he married Victoria. From day one, Victoria and I were like oil and water. She is a woman who lives entirely for an audience. Everything she does is curated for social media, aesthetics, and climbing whatever local social ladder she perceives exists in our mid-sized suburban town. 2 years ago, Ethan's tech startup went under, leaving them drowning in debt. Victoria was frantic. She had just launched a luxury artisanal bakery downtown called The Frosted Tier. She sold $10 cupcakes adorned with edible gold leaf and macarons that tasted like chalk but looked great on Instagram. The bakery was bleeding money in its first year, and their mortgage was suffocating them. Because I loved my son, and because Evelyn would have haunted me if I let our boy go homeless, I made them an offer. They could move into the massive 5-bedroom family home with me, rent-free, so they could get back on their feet. Furthermore, I happened to own the commercial building downtown where Victoria was leasing her bakery space. I forgave her back rent and dropped her monthly rate to almost nothing. I essentially bankrolled their entire lifestyle under the guise of getting back on their feet. The living arrangement was meant to be temporary, but 2 years passed, and they showed no signs of leaving. Victoria had essentially taken over the interior of my house. She replaced Evelyn's antique rugs with stark, modern, minimalist atrocities, threw out my favorite recliner, and constantly hosted her loud, obnoxious influencer friends for tasting parties. I bit my tongue. I stayed in my study, kept to myself, and found my peace in the garden. But a few months ago, the complaints about the backyard started. "It's just so overgrown, Avery," Victoria whined one evening over dinner, swirling her wine glass. "It feels like a cemetery out there. We should really clear out all those messy bushes and put in a pool. A sleek infinity pool with a sunken fire pit. It would be perfect for hosting. Plus, the property value would skyrocket." I put my fork down, staring at her coldly. "The garden stays, Victoria. Evelyn planted every single one of those bushes. It is not a mess. It is an award-winning horticultural collection. And more importantly, it is my wife's legacy. You are living in my home rent-free. Do not ever ask me to destroy my wife's garden again." Ethan looked down at his plate, refusing to meet my eyes. "Dad, she's just making a suggestion. It is a big yard." "The answer is absolutely, unequivocally no," I stated, my voice leaving no room for debate. "If you want a pool, Ethan, You can save the money you're not paying me in rent and buy your own house." The subject was dropped, or so I foolishly thought. 3 weeks ago, my younger brother, Robert, invited me to his cabin in Montana for a week of fly fishing. It was the first time I had left the house for an extended period since Evelyn died. I hesitated, feeling an irrational anxiety about leaving the property, but Ethan assured me he would take care of the house. "Go, Dad. You need a break. Catch some trout. We've got everything under control," he promised, giving me a warm hug. I should have known better. I should have recognized the nervous twitch in his jaw. But I packed my bags, left my keys, and drove to the airport, leaving my sanctuary in the hands of my son. I returned on a Tuesday afternoon. The flight had been delayed. I was exhausted, and all I wanted was to sit on my patio with a cup of coffee and look at Evelyn's climbing roses. As my Uber pulled into my quiet suburban cul-de-sac, my stomach immediately dropped. There was a thick layer of dust coating the neighborhood street. A massive flatbed truck was parked on my front lawn, crushing the sprinkler heads I had installed last spring. And worse, I could hear the deep, rhythmic, mechanical grinding of heavy machinery coming from the back of my property. I threw a $50 bill at the driver, didn't even grab my suitcase from the trunk, and sprinted up the driveway. I threw open the side gate, entirely unprepared for the massacre waiting for me. The garden was gone. I don't mean it was pruned back. I mean it was eradicated. The custom wooden trellises were splintered into a giant pile of scrap wood in the corner. The heritage bushes, the imported vines, the delicate borders, all of it had been ripped out of the earth. In the center of the yard, exactly where the peace rose had stood, a massive, muddy crater had been excavated. A bright yellow mini excavator was sitting in the dirt, its steel teeth resting against the shredded roots of my wife's life's work. Standing by the patio doors, wearing oversized sunglasses and holding a tablet, was Victoria. She was pointing at the crater, chatting animatedly with a sweaty contractor in a hard hat. I couldn't breathe. My chest seized, a physical, blinding pain radiating through my ribs as I stared at the raw, overturned dirt where Evelyn's ashes used to be. It was as if I was watching my wife die all over again. What have you done?" I choked out, my voice barely a whisper, but it carried over the idling engine of the excavator. Victoria spun around, momentarily startled, before arranging her face into a mask of patronizing calm. "Oh, Avery, you're back early. We thought you weren't flying in until tonight." "What have you done?" I roared, the shock shattering into absolute, unadulterated fury. I stormed toward her, causing the contractor to step back nervously. "Avery, relax," Victoria sighed, rolling her eyes. She actually rolled her eyes at me. "We're doing you a favor. I got a contractor who had a sudden cancellation. We're putting in the pool. It's going to look incredible." The garden was a rotting, bug-infested eyesore anyway. "Once the concrete is poured, you'll thank me." Ethan jogged out of the house, his face pale as a ghost when he saw me standing there. "Dad," Ethan started, raising his hands defensively. "Did you know about this?" I demanded, marching right up to my son. "Did you authorize this while I was gone?" Ethan swallowed hard, glancing helplessly at his wife. "Dad, she already signed the contract with the pool guys. They required a non-refundable deposit. Victoria really wanted this, and I figured once it was done, you'd be fine with it. It's just plants, Dad." "Just plants?" My voice shook with a terrifyingly cold rage. I turned to Victoria, who was watching us with her arms crossed, looking thoroughly bored by my emotional display. "You knew what this place meant to me. I told you no, and I decided to take initiative." Victoria snapped back, her true entitled colors finally flying high. "We live here too, Avery. I'm tired of tiptoeing around a shrine to a dead woman. It's morbid. It's time to move on. Ethan and I are building a life here, and we need a space that reflects us." "A shrine," I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Then, The true horror of the situation clicked into place. I looked at the massive crater, the tread marks tearing through the topsoil. Victoria, where is the dirt from the center plot? The Peace Rose? They hauled it away in the dump truck an hour ago, she said dismissively. Why? Because, I said, my voice dropping to a dead, hollow monotone. That is where I buried half of my wife's ashes. You didn't just rip up plants, Victoria. You excavated my wife's remains and sent them to a municipal landfill. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the yard. The contractor took his hard hat off, looking absolutely horrified. Ethan looked like he was going to vomit. He stumbled backward, clutching his stomach. Then, Dad, no, I forgot. I swear to God, I forgot. Victoria's mask slipped for a fraction of a second, a flash of genuine panic crossing her eyes, but her ego was too massive to allow her to show remorse. She squared her shoulders and doubled down. Well, how was I supposed to know? Who buries human remains in a backyard? That's probably a health code violation anyway. It's just dirt now, Avery. We'll buy you a nice urn for the mantle to make up for it. She offered to buy me a nice urn. In that exact moment, the profound, agonizing grief evaporated. It was instantly replaced by a crystalline, hyper-focused clarity. These people were not my family. Ethan had chosen his allegiances, becoming a weak, complicit coward, and Victoria was a parasite who had just desecrated the only thing I had left in this world. Get off my property, I said, quietly. Excuse me? Victoria scoffed. I said, get off my property. Both of you. Pack your bags. You have exactly 30 days to vacate this house before I have the sheriff drag you out by your hair. Victoria laughed, a sharp grating sound. You're kicking us out? Over some dirt? Good luck with that, Avery. We have established tenancy rights. You can't just throw us out on the street. It'll take you 6 months to legally evict us, and honestly, the bakery is blowing up right now. I'm way too busy to pack. We'll leave when we're ready. She turned to the contractor. Pour the concrete tomorrow morning. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a punch. I turned my back on them, walked into my house, and locked the back patio doors. I went straight to my study and poured myself 3 fingers of neat scotch. I sat in my leather chair, my hands shaking so violently I spilled half the liquor on my desk. I drank it down, letting the burn steady my nerves. Victoria was right about one thing. Residential tenancy laws in our state were incredibly strict. Evicting a family member who had lived there for 2 years without a formal lease would take months of court battles. She knew she had me trapped in my own home, forcing me to watch her build her concrete monument over my wife's grave. She thought she was untouchable because her luxury bakery, the Frosted Tear, was finally starting to turn a massive profit, making her feel like a powerful, independent business owner. But Victoria, in her blind arrogance, had forgotten one crucial detail. I didn't just own the house she lived in. I owned the commercial building downtown, where her beloved bakery was located. I opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet and pulled out the thick manila folder containing the commercial lease agreement we had signed 2 years ago. Unlike our residential arrangement, this was a legally binding, ironclad contract drafted by my cutthroat corporate attorney. I flipped through the pages, scanning the clauses, until my fingers stopped on Section 8, Paragraph B, Tenant, Alterations, and Additions. When Victoria's business started booming 6 months ago, she decided the rustic interior of the bakery wasn't Instagrammable enough. Without asking me, she took out a massive $150,000 business loan and completely gutted the interior. She knocked down non-load-bearing walls, installed imported Italian marble countertops, custom crystal chandeliers, and built a massive, open-concept commercial kitchen with pink subway tiles. I had been annoyed when I found out, but I had let it slide because she was my daughter-in-law. I never officially approved the blueprints. I never signed off on the permits. According to the lease she signed, any structural alteration exceeding $5,000 required written consent from the landlord. Failure to obtain consent constituted a material breach of the lease. And the penalty? The landlord reserves the absolute right to immediately terminate the lease upon breach of this clause. Furthermore, landlord retains the right to demand the immediate removal of all unapproved alterations, returning the premises to its original condition at the tenant's sole expense. Should the tenant fail to do so, landlord may unilaterally enter the premises and execute said demolition. She bulldozed my wife's garden because she thought she had the right to make aesthetic changes to my property. I picked up the phone and dialed my attorney, then a commercial demolition crew I used to work with in my engineering days. If Victoria wanted to play with bulldozers, I was going to show her how a professional does it. The next morning, I woke up long before dawn. The house was dead quiet. I stood by the bay window in my study with a mug of black coffee, watching the first pale rays of sunlight illuminate the atrocity in my backyard. The yellow excavator sat like a mechanical vulture over the freshly turned earth of my wife's desecrated garden. The deep, jagged crater where her ashes had been rested like an open wound in the ground. Yesterday, I had been consumed by a suffocating, blinding grief. Today, however, I did not feel sad anymore. I felt cold, brutally calculating, and ruthlessly awake. I dressed meticulously in my best charcoal suit, the exact same suit I had worn to Evelyn's funeral 3 years prior, and drove straight downtown to the law office of my commercial attorney, a brilliant and notoriously aggressive shark named Harrison. Harrison and I went way back. He had handled all the contracts for my engineering firm before I retired. I sat across from his massive mahogany desk and explained the situation. I handed him the commercial lease for the frosted tier and laid out Victoria's unauthorized, exorbitant renovations. Harrison reviewed the commercial lease carefully, pushing his silver spectacles up the bridge of his nose. He verified the explicit lack of municipal permits for the bakery's structural remodel, cross-referencing the city database on his computer. Slowly, he smiled a grim, terrifying smile. "She breached the contract completely, Avery," Harrison confirmed, sliding the heavy stack of papers back across his desk. "Not only do you possess the absolute right to terminate this lease immediately, but you also have the explicit legal authority to restore the premises to its original condition. Since she completely failed to secure the necessary municipal permits for the load-bearing structural changes, the city code enforcement would likely force a teardown and issue massive fines anyway. You are simply expediting the inevitable process. We have her entirely dead to rights." By noon, the formal legal notices were drafted, printed, and signed. I did not send them in the mail, nor did I hire a courier. I wanted to deliver them personally. I parked my car across the street from the frosted tier and watched the bustling scene through the massive bay windows. The place was absolutely packed with a mid-morning rush. Victoria was holding court behind the glass counter, wearing a pristine white designer apron over an expensive floral dress, laughing loudly with a group of women who were snapping photos of their $10 gold leaf cupcakes. The interior of the bakery was a sickening, over-the-top explosion of pastel pink aesthetics, imported Italian marble, and glittering custom crystal chandeliers. It looked exactly like the inside of a wealthy teenager's jewelry box. It made my stomach churn just looking at it. I pushed open the heavy glass door. The brass bell chimed brightly, and Victoria looked up. Her performative smile immediately vanished, replaced instantly by a scowl of intense annoyance and thinly veiled disgust. "Avery," she sighed heavily, stepping away from her adoring customers and marching toward me with her arms crossed defensively. "What on earth are you doing here? I told you yesterday, I am slammed with work. If this little visit is about the dirt in the backyard, You need to get over it. The concrete is getting poured tomorrow. This is not about the backyard, I interrupted, my voice perfectly level and eerily calm. I reached into my suit jacket and handed her the thick, manila envelope. It is about your commercial lease. She snatched the envelope from my hand, tearing it open with her manicured acrylic nails. Her eyes darted aggressively over the bold legal jargon printed on the premium paper. I watched with quiet satisfaction as the color entirely drained from her face, only to be rapidly replaced by a flushed, angry crimson red. "A notice of immediate termination?" she hissed, keeping her voice incredibly low to avoid making a scene in front of her affluent customers. "Are you clinically insane? You are trying to shut down my business over some dead bushes? You fundamentally breached your contract," I replied calmly, ignoring her cruel jab. Section 8, Paragraph B. You gutted my commercial building and installed $250,000 in unapproved, unpermitted renovations without my written consent. You have exactly 72 hours to completely vacate these premises and remove all unauthorized alterations. If you do not comply, I will immediately exercise my right as the property owner to demolish the unapproved structures and restore the building to its original state at your sole expense. Victoria let out a sharp, mocking, and wildly arrogant laugh, dramatically tossing the legal papers onto a nearby pink velvet chair. "You are completely bluffing, Avery. You wouldn't dare touch this bakery. Do you have any idea who I am? I have a massive feature in Gourmet Lifestyle magazine happening right here this Saturday morning. They are sending an entire professional photography crew here for a cover spread. This bakery is the hottest spot in town right now. If you so much as touch one single marble tile in this building, I will personally sue you for everything you own and leave you utterly bankrupt. You cannot successfully sue me for lawfully enforcing a binding legal contract that you willingly signed," I pointed out, taking one step closer so she could see the absolute lack of mercy in my eyes. "And as for your glamorous magazine shoot, I strongly suggest you find a new venue. The clock is ticking, Victoria." I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving her staring furiously after me. I knew for a fact she wouldn't pack a single box. I knew her towering ego was far too colossal to ever believe I would actually follow through on my threat. She genuinely believed I was just a grieving, weak, powerless old man throwing a temporary tantrum. She went home that night and complained loudly to Ethan in the kitchen, loudly framing herself as the innocent victim of a tyrannical, emotionally abusive landlord. Later that evening, Ethan came down the hall to my study, knocking timidly on the heavy oak door. "Dad, please," Ethan begged, standing in the doorway, wringing his hands nervously. "Please don't do this to her. The bakery is finally succeeding after years of struggling. The magazine shoot this Saturday is going to put her on the map nationally. She's incredibly stressed out. She made a terrible mistake with the garden, I admit that, but destroying her livelihood is vindictive and cruel. Your wife willfully destroyed your mother's resting place so she could drink margaritas by a swimming pool, Ethan," I said firmly, not even bothering to look up from the engineering textbook I was reading. "She evicted Evelyn from her own home. I am simply evicting Victoria's business. Actions have severe, unavoidable consequences. Now, get out of my study and close the door." True to my predictions, Victoria did absolutely nothing to prepare for the eviction. She spent the next 3 days arrogantly hyping up her big magazine shoot on her social media platforms. She posted endless, self-congratulatory videos of herself polishing the crystal chandeliers and wiping down the imported Italian marble counters, completely ignoring the legal deadline looming over her head. Meanwhile, back at the house, the pool contractors arrived and unapologetically poured the thick foundation of concrete in my backyard, permanently sealing my beloved wife's empty, destroyed garden beneath a heavy, suffocating slab of gray cement. I watched them do it from my upstairs window, drinking my coffee, feeling the very last remaining traces of my paternal mercy wither and die entirely. I spent those 3 days quietly coordinating logistics with Mike, a tough as nails, highly experienced foreman who ran an elite commercial demolition crew. I trusted Mike with my life. We had worked together on massive municipal engineering projects for over 20 years. We went down to the county records office and pulled the original, legally approved blueprints of the bakery. We meticulously outlined exactly what was original, load-bearing architecture, and what was Victoria's illegal, unpermitted aesthetic fluff. We rapidly secured the necessary emergency permits for a rapid interior teardown, making sure every single legal loophole was tightly closed. Friday night finally came. The 72-hour legal deadline officially expired at the stroke of midnight. Victoria had left the bakery perfectly, immaculately staged for the Saturday morning photo shoot. Every single cupcake was perfectly placed in the display cases, every counter gleaming flawlessly. She went to sleep deeply in my house, dreaming vividly of her impending fame, wealth, and influencer glory. At exactly 4 in the morning on Saturday, I woke up, drank a final cup of black coffee, and drove downtown. The city streets were dead quiet when my truck pulled up to the commercial block. Mike and his heavy demolition crew were waiting. 3 industrial dump trucks and a front-end loader sat in the alleyway. 10 burly men in hard hats stood by, drinking coffee. I walked to the glass doors of the bakery, used my master key, and pushed them open. I flipped the main breaker. The massive crystal chandeliers flared to life, illuminating the sickening pastel paradise. "Listen up," I told the crew. "You have the blueprints. Everything in here that was not here 2 years ago comes down right now. The imported marble countertops, the pink tiles, the fake partitions, the chandeliers. Rip it all out to the wooden studs. I want this place looking like a raw concrete warehouse before sunrise." Mike flashed a fiercely loyal smile. "Break out the sledgehammers, boys." The noise was instantaneous and deafening. The cloying smell of the bakery was quickly replaced by choking dust. The wildly expensive crystal chandeliers were unbolted and smashed into dumpsters. The flawless Italian marble countertops were pulverized into jagged chunks. The trendy pastel tiles were scraped off the walls, leaving behind ugly brown construction adhesive. The unpermitted open-concept kitchen was dismantled entirely. It was a chaotic symphony of righteous destruction. By 7 in the morning, the sun rose, casting shadows into a gutted storefront. The infamous luxury bakery was gone. In its place was a dusty cavern of exposed pipes, raw studs, and scarred concrete floors. Now. As the crew loaded the final debris, a black vehicle stopped at the curb. Victoria stepped out, wearing a flawless designer suit and heavy makeup for her national magazine shoot. Behind her, a commercial van parked, and a professional photography crew began unloading expensive cameras and lighting equipment. Victoria froze on the sidewalk. Her jaw dropped. Her sunglasses slipped down her nose. She stared in absolute horror through the bay windows at the destroyed shell of her bakery. She looked wildly at the dump trucks filled with the shattered remains of her precious marble. A visceral, blood-curdling scream ripped from her throat. She sprinted toward the open door, shoving past the workers and coughing violently on the thick drywall dust. "My bakery!" she shrieked hysterically, falling to her knees on the rough concrete, ruining her pristine suit instantly. "What did you do?" I stepped calmly from the shadows of the gutted back office. "I strictly enforced the lease, Victoria," I stated loudly. "I legally warned you. You failed to comply. The unapproved structural alterations have now been completely removed." Victoria scrambled to her feet, her perfect makeup streaked with dark tears and gray plaster dust. "You are a psychotic monster," she screamed, lunging forward. Mike smoothly stepped between us, blocking her path. "You completely ruined my life." The magazine crew is standing right outside. You completely ruined the sacred resting place of my late wife so you could drink liquor in a swimming pool, I replied coldly. Consider us entirely even. Ethan drove his sedan up haphazardly. He ran inside, went completely pale, and looked physically sick. Dad, you destroyed it. I always keep my promises. I am changing the deadbolt locks today. You are legally evicted from these commercial premises. You also have 30 days to vacate my home. Victoria sobbed hysterically. The photography crew silently packed their expensive gear and drove away. Victoria had arrogantly taken out a massive business loan to fund those illegal renovations. She was now saddled with staggering debt and possessed absolutely zero functioning business to pay it back. I drove home and handed the pool contractors a municipal stop work order. Fill the hole back in, I commanded. Ethan and Victoria moved out days later, heavily in debt. I hired master landscapers. We ripped up the poured concrete and tilled the rich soil. Yesterday, I bought a brand new peace rose bush. It is quite small, but incredibly resilient, just exactly like my lasting memory of Evelyn. If you enjoyed this intense story of justified revenge, please hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. Please comment below. Let me, if you enjoyed this intense story of justified revenge and defending what truly matters, please hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible real-life drama stories. Your support helps us bring you more unbelievable tales of karma, betrayal, and sweet justice every single week. Do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts on this.